The sergeant looked askance at the young man. "You've been there, Squire?" Few men who were not renegades or weapons runners had visited the Northlands and lived to return to the kingdom. "With the prince," replied Locklear. "I was with him at Armengar and High Castle." The sergeant fell silent and looked ahead. The soldiers nearest Locklear exchanged glances and nods. One whispered to the man behind him. No soldier living in the north hadn't heard of the fall of Armengar before the hosts of Myrmendamus, the powerful Moradel leader who had destroyed the human city in the Northlands and then had invaded the kingdom. Only his defeat at Sethanon 10 years before had kept his army of dark elves, trolls, goblins, and giants from rending the kingdom. The survivors of Armengar had come to live in Yabon, not far from Tyre Sog, and the telling of the great battle and the flight of the survivors, as well as the part played by Prince Aruta and his companions, had grown in the telling. Any man who had served with Prince Aruta and Guy de Baz-Tyra could only be judged a hero. With a reappraising glance at the young man, the sergeant kept his silence. Locklear's amusement at shutting up the voluble sergeant was short-lived, as the snow started to freshen, blowing harder by the minute. He might have gained enough stature with the garrison to be treated with more respect in days to come, but he was still a long way from the court in Krondor, the fine wines and pretty girls. It would take a miracle for him to get back in Aruta's good graces any time before the next winter found him still trapped in a rural court with dullards. After 10 minutes of silent travel, the sergeant said, "Another 2 miles, sir, and we can start back." Locklear said nothing. By the time they returned to the garrison, it would be dark and even colder than it presently was. He would welcome the warm fire in the soldiers' commons, and probably content himself sharing a meal with the troops, unless the Baron requested he dine with the household. Locklear judged that unlikely, as the Baron had a flirtatious young daughter who had fawned on the visiting young noble the first night he had appeared in Tyre Sog, and the Baron full well knew why Locklear was at his court. On the 2 occasions he had since dined with the Baron, the daughter had been conspicuously absent. There was an inn not too far from the castle, but by the time he had returned to the castle, he knew he would be too sick of the cold and snow to brave the elements again, even for that short distance. Besides, the only 2 barmaids there were fat and dull. With a silent sigh of resignation, Locklear realized that by the arrival of spring they might look lovely and charming to him. Locklear just prayed he would be permitted to return to Krondor by the midsummer festival of Bannerpeace. He would write to his best friend, Squire James, and ask him to use his influence to get Aruta to recall him early. Half a year up here was punishment enough. "Seigneur," said Sergeant Bales, using Locklear's formal title. "What's that?" He pointed up the rocky path. Movement among the rocks had caught the sergeant's eye. Locklear replied, "I don't know. Let's go take a look." Bales motioned, and the patrol turned left, moving up the path. Quickly the scene before them resolved itself. A lone figure, on foot, hurried down the rocky path, and from behind the sounds of pursuit could be heard. "Looks like a renegade had a falling out with some brothers of the Dark Path," said Sergeant Bales. Locklear pulled his own sword. "Renegade or not, we can't let the Dark Elves carve him up. It might make them think they could come south and harass common citizens at whim." "Ready!" shouted the sergeant, and the veteran patrol pulled swords. The lone figure saw the